Hello, this is Skylit Lake reading Super Science by thatchickendude. Chapter 53, The Good, the Bad, and the Vampire. Egon took a deep and calming breath as he left Clock to her own devices in the room with the former gangster. Today and yesterday had already been tough enough, but he was glad it was all over. After pushing back his hair and fixing his glasses, he heard Anima ask behind him, "Sir, are you busy?" Egon turned to the ever-changing man and replied, "No, I'm not. What's up, Genus?" Looking nervous as he tugged on his collar and looked down at his Puropad, he said, I was taking note and stock of the animals after they had escaped during the whole monster deal." Egon's eyes drooped halfway, and he asked, "How many have escaped?" Genus waved his hand rapidly and stated, "Oh no, don't get it wrong. All of them are completely accounted for, especially every dodo." "Except?" Egon prompted. "Except for one," Genus finally admitted. Egon took a deep breath and exclaimed in relief, "Oh, phew, I thought it would be a huge number or something." But Anima looked off to the side while biting his lower lip. "It's one exceptionally problematic one, isn't it?" Egon asked him, as the man nodded in confirmation. Egon wipes his hands across his face with a deep sigh before asking with a strained voice, "Please tell me it's not the Night Feeder." "No, that died during the invasion," Genus informs him. Getting a bit less stressed, he inquired, "The Glavenus?" "Currently being treated for a severed tail," Genus replied. Now even more off his hedge, he asked, more confused, "The spiders? Any of them still left are inside Ungliot's chamber." Anima told him. "The Dodongo?" Egon asked after exhausting all other terrible outcomes. "They're harmless unless provoked," Genus once again informed him. Now, thoroughly confused by the man's previous stress and discomfort, he asked blankly, "Then what?" Genus looked off to the side while grinding his teeth as he told him, "Something else I was currently working on. I've sent updates to you on a regular schedule." Egon blinked a few times, trying to remember what he meant. Then it came to him, and he asked back, "You mean the vampire you accidentally created?" Anima nodded, and Egon shook his head rapidly before asking, "How? I thought we made sure its enclosure was not hooked up to the purge modification." Looking over his Puropad again, Anima told him, "During Overhaul's abomination transformation, the walls making up its enclosure were absorbed into it, and when things calmed down and night fell, it fled into the city." Egon wipes his hands across his face in stress once more and inquired, "Please tell me you put a tracker on that thing." "I did, but it remembered where it was and removed it," Anima told him nervously. Egon took a minute to turn around, take off his glasses, rub his eyes, breathe deeply, and ask Anima, "Please tell me what you put into that thing and what it does." Anima looked through his notes quickly and told him, "Bats and mostly humans. Then some cuttlefish, axolotl, sea sponge, mosquito, and a few other things." "Why?" was all the man could ask back in the form of a plea. Genus finally dropped his unsure and nervous state as he half exclaimed to the man, "You know what the purpose of those experiments was. I was trying to see if I could craft a spliced human and bat genome for it to have an immune system comparable to humans, so humans could have a way to be naturally immune to many diseases. All tests failed since the genes would deteriorate and reject one another, so I had to add something else to help them meld better. Egon accepted his answer, knowing it was partially his fault for allowing it to happen, though he never would have expected something like this to happen. So he sighs calmly and reiterates, "What can it do?" "Oh, suck blood, fly, superhuman everything, turn invisible, harden its skin, razor claws, shapeshift." Genus began to list off. "Shapeshift?" Egon cut him off in an explosion of concern and fear. Genus quickly told him, trying to reassure him. "So far, it can take the form of certain animals and even human disguises." Though this explanation does not help his mood, Egon pulls at his hair before breathing again and firmly tells him, "We have to find it and kill it. No exceptions." Genus knew that would be the outcome of this talk, accepted it the moment he knew his creation escaped. In all honesty, he was planning to scrap the creature and start from scratch. "Yes, sir. I brought this up with Hatsum and pulled an all-nighter to have a few assassin droids ready to go out on the hunt," he told his boss. Egon nods and tells him as they will both walk off, "I better call the police and the heroes about this. No one can fight that thing." Few hours later. Sir, I've reported from the police and the assassin droids," Genus told Egon as he poked his head into his room the day after they discussed the current situation. "Please tell me it's dead," Egon hopefully asked with a sigh, but instead saw the changing man solemnly shake his head. "Then what news do you have?" He sighs and asks him, after rubbing his eyes. Pulling his pure eye out and looking over his findings, he tells him, "Police and heroes alike have reported people going missing and a strange woman in a sleek white sheet. The assassin's drone have been found and destroyed. It's smarter than we have credit for." Both Egon and Genus shook in fear at the thought. "On the plus side, we've determined its feeding patterns, hunting grounds, and 3 potential spots for its nest," Genus tried to assure him with a nervous, chipper tone. "Then get Hatsum to fix up or upgrade some more assassin droids," Egon told him as if the answer was obvious. Genus thinks and then theorizes, "This is just my guess, but I think that thing knows the droids aren't real and has figured out a way to outmaneuver its AI. Egon sighs and cups his hand around his mouth as he thinks aloud. "It would take too long to make a newer and better AI. So, what do you have in mind?" Gina smiles at the question and then offers, "We pilot the droids remotely, we check out the sites, find the vampire and kill it. No harm to anyone and it's done quietly." Egon smiles at the idea and then agrees. "That's a great idea. I also took the liberty of bringing this up with Cho, and she can outfit the droids with vampire-killing equipment." Genus follows up. Egon raised an eyebrow and inquired in a joking tone, "What, like crosses and stakes?" "I had a feeling something like this may happen, so I gave it a lot of weaknesses, specifically to sunlight," Genus explained with a smirk. Egon gets up from his seat, claps the man on his shoulders, and says to him in a low, excited tone, "Then, let's go vampire hunting." Chapter 54. A Hunting We Will Go. The next day, Genus, Egon, and Izuku had set off their 3 individual assassin drones to the 3 primary locations where the vampire could have their nest. The 3 of them were sitting on personal computers that were directly connected to each of their robots. On the screen was live footage of what each robot could see. The three men piloted them by their keyboards, almost like a first-person shooter. Each droid is outfitted with all sorts of vampire-killing equipment, ranging from UV light cannons, blades, buzzsaws, reinforced armor, more flexible and dexterous joints, bombs filled with silver powder and herbs the vampire was deathly allergic to, and a slew of other devices and weapons. Once the droids were finished, they quickly went through a test run by each scientist, and were then sent out the very next night so as not to waste any time. Each scientist had an earpiece so as not to have to yell over one another, and the monster's superhearing picked up the sound. "Anything from your end, Genus?" Egon asked over his earpiece. Genus took a moment to scan the chemical plant he was investigating, and then reported, "Nope, empty. You?" Egon also scanned the nuclear plant he was searching for. After getting the readings back, he replied, "Dead end. How about you, Izuku?" After getting no response from the boy for over a minute, he called again. "Izuku? I think I found it," Izuku said out of the blue. Hearing this, Egon immediately told him, "Share your feed." Izuku tapped a few keys on his board and started his live video over the two others. On the shared screen, it showed the inside of a hydropower plant. One room in particular seemed to be filled with cocoon-like structures that suspended what looked like to be humans. "What the?" Egon said in disgust as he watched the robot's head look around and scan the area made into a living meat locker. "Yep, this is its nest. Open, dark, warm, and full of food," Genus confirmed. "Are those people bound in webs?" Izuku asked. "Genus," Egon growled. Genus swiftly and feverishly protested. "I didn't add spider DNA, I swear. Though I might have added a pinch of swiftlet. So it's spit." "Gross," Izuku complained. "Where's the vamp?" Egon asked as he put his face to the screener to find it. "Probably out to get more food. I added some pack rat to it," Genus explained to him. "Of course you did," Egon sighed as he flopped back into his seat, rubbing his eyes. Just then, Izuku picked something up on the droid's hearing sensors and tuned in. Once he had done that, he heard something strange and clear. Sharing it with the others, he asked, "Wait, you hear that?" The other two went quiet and listened in as Egon said in confusion, "Singing?" The assassin droids turned around. Standing in a spot that had been previously unoccupied was what looked like a woman with beautiful, bright red hair made up into a bun, pale white skin, green eyes, and nothing but a sleek, slim sheet that covered her like a cloak. There, he heard the woman sing, clearly as she walked about the dark power pants room filled with its human victims. "Wolves asleep amidst the trees, bats all swaying in the breeze, but one soul lies anxious, wide awake, fearing all manner of ghouls, hags, and rafts," she sang as she picked up a stuffed animal that no doubt belonged to a child victim. He had his chance to try and see what she was about, whether the target or some crazy woman, and if it was his target, whether it was intelligent and could be reasoned with. So he turned on the droid's speaker system and said, "Nice tune, Never heard of it before. The woman looked at the toy and threw it off to the side. Then, in a horsey tone, as if she wasn't used to speaking at all, she replied, "Folks have forgotten." "They've got other things on their minds," Izuku said as he primed the droid's weapon and defenses. "Things like me?" she asked coyly, while turning her hand as she unbound her hair, allowing it to fall like a stream of blood around her head and face. Izuku couldn't help but be enamored by the beauty. He shook himself out of it, though, as he said in a serious tone, "You know what I've come for." She chuckles at the statement and walks to the side, undoing the first few buttons of her outfit. She says, "Time passes, and no amount of duty would convince any human to hunt me down," she says, the last few words in an increasingly demonic tone, while pulling the white sheet past her shoulders. With one little pull, allowing the cloth to come just to her nipple line, she suddenly vanishes like the wind, disappearing from her view as her clothes fall to the ground. Izuku quickly looked around and saw how the water on the ground broke, and a nearby door was slammed open. Although Izuku quickly figured out what had happened, Egon didn't, and he exclaimed in shock and fear, "She's gone!" But Genus assured him and said, "No, just invisible. Let's get our droids to help out. Izuku, keep her busy till we get there. Don't let her escape." Izuku nods and begins to prime the other defenses in the droid. First, he activated the force field splinter, made from the remains of one of the accuser's 8 bullets. He had the blade protrude from the right hand and allowing the left hand to produce the silver bombs. Finally, he released a blood agent through clear tubes in his body and simulated a false heartbeat. The blood circulating throughout the false vascular system was made of human blood, but drugged with things extremely toxic to the monster. Once the robot was ready, it began to walk straight to the idly swinging door, where Egon asked, "What did you call that thing again?" Gina scratched the back of his head and answered, "An Alp." The robot walked into the room, seeing it was one of the storage areas for spare parts for repair on any of the machines. Once in, it used its scanner to look around but found nothing at all. Just some rats. That's when Izuku realized that the creature could no doubt control its body heat and become invisible to heat sensors. Then, the movement sensors picked up something on one of the metal rafters above him, and, without turning the machine's head, he made it throw the bomb in the direction, and the bomb broke. The thousands of tiny little fragments of silver exploded everywhere like confetti on a cannon, thus allowing the invisible monster to become visible again, at least in its outlines. It jumped down from the rafters and roared at the machine as they both engaged in a battle of claws and blades, using its hardened skin. The Alp easily blocked the blades. However, once it realized the weapon was made of silver, it changed its strategy and used its unnatural flexibility to dodge. Eventually, the robot managed to grab the Alp and throw it to the ground, where it tried to pierce its heart. Unfortunately, the creature seemed to turn into the wind itself and slipped straight through. The robot looked around for the creature but found nothing. That is, until a huge metal box was thrown at it, and the force field splinter was used to block the attack. The Alp tried to come in from behind with an attack, but the machine picked up its movements and whirled around to blast it with a beam of pure sunlight. The Alp screamed and backed off while trying to cover its face, only to get slashed across the arms and face by the blade, allowing the blade to cut through, though the wounds healed instantly. That's when the Alp got back its sight, screamed, and charged at the machine, pinning it to the wall. Just before it could pierce the robot, it dropped a new bomb filled with toxins, and with a huge cloud enveloping the two of them, the Alp ran out of the cloud, coughing violently, only for it to be pinned to the wall adjacent by giant staples. The droid walked out of the cloud, walked towards the Alp with the UV light directed on it and its blade at the ready. The Alp's skin appeared to burn like paper in the fire, and as it tried to break free, it stopped and took a deep breath and suddenly released a powerful scream so strong that not only did it send the robot flying, it broke the UV light and caused Izuku to rip off his earpiece. "That's new?" Izuku yelled, nearly having his hearing knocked out by the scream. But getting back to the topic at hand, he exclaimed, "Izuku, how's your droid?" Getting his senses back, Izuku pulled up the diagnostics on his droid and saw it had only minor damage. He sighed in relief and answered, "Still in one piece." The robot got up from the ground while the Alp broke free from its restraint, and the two engaged once more. After clashing once again, the Alp grabbed the metal box and threw it at the machine, to which it was blasted apart with a fireball from a fire splinter. In the ensuing explosion, the Alp kicked the robot in the stomach and clawed its face, causing it to fall. It managed to get back up, but the Alp snuck up behind it, grabbed its head, and sunk its teeth into the clear tube filled with blood. Once it got more than enough, it threw the robot aside and looked down on the machine. Now fully visible, it screeched at its semi-victory. As it stalked towards it, it quickly noticed something was wrong. It looked down at its naked body and noticed that its natural armor was fading and its blood was boiling. After realizing what the machine had done, it screeched at it and went in for an attack, only for it to be forced back to concrete by the Air Force splinter. The droid fixed its broken arm and adjusted its neck before going in for a counterattack. The Alp hastily got up and tried to attack as well, but quickly found itself on the losing end as the blade cleanly sliced off its arm, a gash across its stomach, and one more across its neck. Only this time the injuries did not heal. The Alp fell to the floor and began to crawl away, while screaming in fear, only for the droid to unleash a silver net on its body, trapping it under the weight as a new UV light shined on it, keeping it still as it approached while readying its blade for the final strike. While trapped, the Alp managed to turn around, retake its human form, and put on a pathetic expression that made Izuku stop its movements. Pushing their advantage, the Alp said in its hoarse voice, "No, please, don't kill me. I want to live." Izuku stopped his final blow on the dying creature and felt a sense of morality and a bleeding heart begin to fight with him as he stared back at the pleading face of the Alp. Noticing Izuku's lack of incentive, Genus exclaimed, "Izuku, what are you doing? She's right there." "But," Izuku tried to argue, only for Egon to yell in haste, "But nothing. Take her down." "Why are you doing this? I just want to live. Oh, please, please," the Alp begged pathetically, striking deeper into Izuku's heartstring. Izuku ripped off his glasses as he shook his head to clear his mind and tried to negotiate with the other two men. "She thinks and feels. She's like Otto and Clock. Can't we—" But Genus cut him off and stated firmly, "Izuku, I know what you're thinking, but take it from the person who created that thing. She's a mimic. She's not intelligent. She's just trying to misdirect you. She's an animal." Izuku looked back at the screen, still conflicted his mind and feelings until the Alp made her move, seeing the lack of movement in the machine. She smiled evilly as she broke free from the net and charged at it despite the UV light burning her flesh. But Izuku reacted fast and made the robot bring up its arm, staking the creature straight through the chest. The creature halted as it was pierced on the blade and it appeared to die right there and then. But that was another ruse as it tried to lash out with its claws, only for Izuku to make the blade turn to a chainsaw and cut the Alp straight in half. When the buzzsaw broke through the flesh, the two halves of the surprised Alp fell to the ground and bled out, finally killing the creature. Izuku was shocked, scared, and sad at the same time. He breathed heavily, and his eyes streamed, his tears as his inner mind and emotions battled like a raging storm. His hand shook, and he leaned his head down to the floor, where he pushed his chair out and began to weep into his hands. At this point, Genus and Egon came to the boy, seeing his state of being. Genus approached him, embraced him, and praised him in a soothing voice, taking the form of a cat. "You did good, kid. You did well." Egon rustled his hair, and he looked proud as he said, "Let's call the heroes and police." Later. "I'm so glad that you were able to handle this, but why didn't you tell us? We could have dealt with it," a hero told the three scientists as they converged at the hydroelectric plant, with law enforcement and other heroes alike assessing the scene. "No offense, but we didn't even know what we were fully up against. We only found its nest on a guess," Izuku told the heroes. "We also didn't want to get you hurt because of our mistake," Genus said with an awkward laugh. "And if she had fled, we would have been back to square one," Egon stressed, sighing. Before the conversation could continue, an officer approached the chief of police and informed him, "Sir, we found all the missing people, and they're all alive." "That's a relief," Izuku, Genus, and Egon said at the same time, as the police chief getting weird stares from the law enforcement and the heroes. But the other officers took the attention away from them as he continues. "Seems like she was keeping them for a constant food source. Also, there was one other thing," he said while addressing the scientist. "That creature, you called it a vampire, right?" The men looked at one another, back to the officer, where they all nodded. The officer pushed back his hat, eyes wide as he shook his head and told them in an uncomfortable tone, "Well, you may want to see this yourself." Everyone was curious about how vague he was and followed him into a different room, a much larger room that was far larger and housed over a dozen different strange, large, nearly human-sized structures, glossy translucent, glowing, slimy, and soft to the touch, with an off-white greyish colour to them. Blinking in confusion before the strange things, Izuku asked, Are those eggs?" Genus took a stage and inspected the things before confirming. "Yes, they're eggs." Genus rubbed his chin and said in self-satisfaction, like solving some kind of mystery, "No wonder she was keeping all these people here. She was going to feed them to her kids." This thought made everyone shiver in a mixture of fear and disgust, making Genus's sweat drop as he realized he had said it out loud. "What kind of vampire lays giant eggs?" a hero asked. "One that has several species of amphibian, reptile, and bird, including kiwi, in its genome," Genus answered plainly, making the hero stare at him suspiciously. Egon quickly interjected and told the law enforcement and heroes, "We'll take it back to our laboratory. We'll see what hatches, and if it's a threat, we'll eliminate them." "The laboratory that just got destroyed?" the chief of police asked back rhetorically, This time, Izuku stepped up and explained to the suspicious and concerned people, "We have a few testing chambers that survived. It'll be more than enough to house these things and figure out what to do with them." With that, he clapped his hands, and a bunch of very large and strong-looking robots waddled in and picked up the soft-shelled egg before taking them out of the plant and into a large truck to be transported, and placed them into one of the remaining reinforced testing chambers at Nip. What was inside the eggs, time could only tell, and all could only hope they weren't half as bad as most expected them to be. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. This is a lovely chapter from my That Chicken Dude, so please give a kudos, and I think I've got a nickname for you guys. Fishies. My little fishies. Or fishlings. But fishies. So hey fishies. Fishies. Sounds funny. Fishies. Yeah, anyway, this is a lovely chapter. This is excellent, and I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!